Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah, we're doing this Umoomi session in regards to this COVID-19 pandemic and all the issues that have come up as a result of it, including the issues of, a lot of other issues that can come up in this regard as well, especially in disaster relief. So I'm going to hand it off to the National Umoomi team. We're really grateful to have Mohtmam Saab Umoomi, Irfan Ahmed Saib, and Umar Khan Saab Naib Mohtmam Umoomi here to lead us in this session. So I say Jazakallah to these brothers, and I'll hand it off to them.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. My name is Irfan Ahmed. I serve as Mohtmam Umoomi. So on tonight's call, we're going to go over a presentation that Umar Bhai has put together. And it's about, what to do when disaster strikes and different things to think about. Then after that, we'll go into a little show and tell. I'll show you my setup that I have at my house, as well as Umar Bhai will show you his setup that he's got, just to give you some ideas as to, what things you should be doing, what things you should have. And then after that, we'll open it up to a question and answer session at the end. So for now, I'll pass it over to Umar Bhai to go through our presentation.
I just wanted to make sure everybody can hear me. If you can, let me know, please.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right, Jazakallah everybody for joining. It's kind of fitting that we're talking about disaster preparedness in the midst of a crisis that we're all part of. So this is a short presentation. I'm going to try to cover a lot of ground here in this presentation, and some of the material I might go a little faster. So feel free to ask any questions towards the end, and myself and Mohtmam Saab would love to answer any of those questions. If we can't, we will try to get you resources after the presentation on Telegram, so we can share that with you. So with that said, I just wanted to ask if you can see my screen at the moment. This is a Costco. It's in Los Angeles just a few weeks ago. And you can see they're only letting in 6 or 10 people at a time to go into the store. And it would be hours before somebody can even get into the store to get something. So why is that picture important? What's happening here? This is basically people who were not prepared for a calamity that was around the corner, even though it's been talked about for the last 2 months, but was taken very lightly until it was too late, and then everybody panicked. And if you've been to the grocery stores, you've probably seen this little scenario where the shelves are pretty much all wiped out. There's nothing there. They're all, anybody who could get their hands on something, they were able to, whether it's somebody in Kentucky who was hoarding 17,000 bottles of hand sanitizers, or people who are, picking up toilet paper from every Walmart they could stop at. So why is it important for us as Muslims who have the belief in Allah to be prepared for something like this? Why can't we just say, oh, God will take care of us. Allah Ta'ala's will, Allah Ta'ala's will is always Allah Ta'ala's will. And if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. So I'd like to share this hadith with you. It's from Tirmidhi, and it says that an ancient Arab phrase is tie your camel and place your trust in Allah. And the background for that is that one time Hazrat Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam saw a Bedouin leaving his camel without tying it. And he asked him, why are you not tying this camel down? So the Bedouin replied that he was placing his trust in Allah, and there was no need for him to tie the camel. So the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ responded to him and said, trust in Allah, but tie your camel. So just in the modern day example would be something like you park your car. Do you leave it unlocked? You don't, right? You take the first initiative, first step to lock your car, or when you leave your house unattended for a while, or even when you go to sleep at night, you make sure your doors and your windows are locked because you're taking an extra precautionary step instead of just saying, well, I trust in Allah and He will take care of me. Allah Ta'ala wants you to take the first step in tying your camel before you say, now I'm going to put my trust in Allah. Yeah, also, Khalifa Awad has been telling us this for almost, it's coming up 9 years now. I think 2011 was the first time he asked us to be prepared as a precautionary measure. And at that time, the instructions were to store food in your houses, water, medication, and other essentials you need on a daily basis to last you at least a couple of weeks, maybe a few weeks or a couple of months. And one of the reasons behind that wasn't that Hazur was concerned that there was a third world war looming, but it was with a concern that there's a lot of things that are happening in the world which could put us in a situation which could interrupt the supply chain, and the things that we kind of take for granted on the daily will become scarce. So we have to heed to that advice and be prepared for an emergency. So here's a list of a couple of emergencies that come to mind, whether it's a house fire or a forest fire, a storm that rolls around, flooding in the area, a hurricane or a tornado, earthquake, toxic spill, or nuclear if you're in a fallout area of a nuclear power plant, or it could be an act of terrorism or civil unrest. And as you all currently know, there's a pandemic. So what happens when the disaster strikes? One of the first things that happens is that there's obviously a deviation from normal. Things don't stay normal anymore. You lose power. If it's winter time, it's a winter storm, you may lose heat. If you're in your car driving somewhere and there's road closures, you may get stranded. In the current crisis, there's a risk of infection. Because of that, there's a lot of financial institutions and work and businesses that have been shut down or told to stay shut, so it can cause financial stress. Facilities closed, like schools and clinics and worship areas and community centers, grocery stores. There could be food shortages from people hoarding material. Could be property damage. It could be disruption in communication. Your family you could get separated from your family. And then last but not least, the emergency services in the area could be overloaded, which makes it difficult for somebody to provide you with immediate help. So to prepare for things or for the unforeseen events, you have to identify what you're preparing for. There are different ways for you to prepare for different situations. If you're preparing, if for example, if it's a winter storm, if you live in an area where the weather changes drastically during winter times, so your preparation might be for winter storm. So there's certain steps you will take to make sure that if you ever get caught in a winter storm, you have certain things on hand that can get you out of a bind fairly quick. Number two would be that you'll make a plan that you can execute. Maybe you'll do a dry run and how you're going to execute that plan. And then also, then you'll fill in the gaps to see, okay, well, what are the deficiencies that I need to fill in the gaps? Do I need to get a flare kit in my car? Do I need to get a shovel? Things like that. And we'll cover some of those things down the road here. Last but not least, I do want to let you guys know that the biggest thing is do not panic. Even if you're in a situation, do not panic. Be prepared. Know the right information from the right authorities. Just because somebody sent you a text message or shared something on Telegram or WhatsApp, don't believe that is in fact the truth. There's some resources I'll provide at the end of this presentation for government agencies that provide you with up-to-date information in case there's a disaster, whether it's health-related or natural. So number one, each household should decide on establishing a communication plan. So whether you're a mom, dad, brother, sister, have a solid communication with every family member that you're living with, or even somebody who lives in your area. And make sure you guys already have a predetermined spot where you might want to meet at in case XYZ happens. And this will basically prevent you from having confusion. There's a lot of times what happens if there's an emergency that's local or regional, all the cell phone lines will be jammed up and you would not be able to communicate with each other in a timely fashion. If you're able to place out a call, the other person may not be able to receive the call. So having a plan in place of, let's say, a meeting plan that, hey, if this happens, we'll meet at elementary school down the road here so that we can all get together, and then we'll figure out what to do, especially if there's like an evacuation or something, or a disaster that might have damaged your property, or road closures. You can also have evacuation routes or pre-set up where you can leave town if you need to, and have a couple of different ways of getting out of town if there's an evacuation notice. Set up, some multiple locations that you can meet at. Okay, well, if this place is not accessible, maybe we'll meet at this other location, so both parties have that ahead of time. Also, another thing that helps out is having a third person or a person who does not live in your immediate area to be the point of contact if there's an emergency. So you make that call to that one person, whether it's your parents or a family member in a different state, and say, hey, do you mind contacting my wife, my kid, my child, my brother, my sister, and let them know that, I'm okay and I'm on my way to this location, and she or he should come meet me there. So if there's a disaster that strikes, you have to make sure that you follow the local authorities, whether it's via radio, TV, neighbors, or 911, or if you're at work, your work may provide you with the directions. Have your plan ready, whether you're going to evacuate or shelter in place. And also, if there is a disastrous strike, sometimes the authorities will tell you to turn off your gas or your electric. So make sure you you understand how to go ahead and do that at your specific location. Or if you have to leave your place, how to shut off the electricity or gas before you leave the location. Or if there's a damage in the area and there's gas leaking out in your house, a tree fell on your house and it took out a gas line or something, you may want to know how to go in and shut it off so that you can leave your house in a safe condition. Also, you want to check with elderly and homebound neighbors. If somebody's on the way that lives in your neighborhood and there's a fire, you may want to give them a call and say, hey, look, we're already going through a situation. Don't come here. We don't want to. You want to leave the space out for the emergency vehicles or whatever to get in place. So if you can warn other people of an impending or of a certain condition, do that ahead of time. Next, once you're in that position where you are in the middle of a situation, you will obviously need to get a kit that is suited for that specific scenario. There are a lot of overlaps between the kits, so I would personally recommend that you start, if you are interested, and I would highly recommend that you do start creating such a kit, is that you start off with the items that are the most common between multiple kits. And we'll cover some of those items here in the slideshow and then in the show and tell towards the end. So these essential supplies will be for self or for family that you will need access to during a disaster. You may want to look at an evacuation kit or something called a bug out bag. This is a bag that you can throw in enough material, well thought out material that you can use to last you 2 to 3 days. If you have to leave your home or get out of your home, you have enough supplies to make sure that you can survive, whether it's having a thermal blanket, having some high calorie dense food, water, that kind of stuff, hand sanitizer in your backpack. Number 2 would be the shelter in place. This is basically your castle, your home, wherever you're living. You want to make sure that you have enough things at that location to last you for a few days, maybe a few weeks, depending on the crisis at hand. So you can hunker down and you don't have to go out. So like right now, everybody is self-quarantined. And let's say that they shut everything down, including grocery stores, and because supply chains were somehow affected by another natural disaster on top of this pandemic, you would have enough material to survive you a few weeks, if you will, before some alternate arrangements can be made or can be afforded to you. So the evacuation kit, so this is basically, again, if you have to evacuate, number one thing would be that you want to make sure that you leave your house in a safe condition. So know how to turn off your electric, know how to turn off your gas before you leave the house. And there's no need to pack like massive amounts of water and food in a go kit, because the assumption here in an evacuation kit is that you're going to a location, which is a shelter or a family member's a house, or a hotel somewhere, and eventually you will have access to food and water, so you don't have to worry about keeping a lot of stuff with you. The stuff that you want to take with you would be some non-perishable items, a medical kit if you take any medicines that are that you need on a daily basis. Always good to have those on hand. Extra clothing, any tools, highly recommend getting a multi-tool, flashlights, extra batteries, pocket knife. Make sure your car has a full tank of gas. If you have a bicycle and it's a local area that you're going to, that's even better. Make sure you have your phone charger, your power bank, etc. Copies of any important documentations in case you need to get a hotel room, or you misplace something, you have an extra set of copies. It's also a good idea to send a copy of these things to a family member that you trust, so that you can get access to it in case, God forbid, your house is on fire or whatever, and you lost those items. So it's always good to have backups. Battery operated radio, a hard copy of the map or offline version on your phone, and any personal hygiene items. If you have kids, diapers and things like that, hand sanitizer. Last thing you want to do is get sick on your during your evacuation. And then obviously the last and most important thing would be cash in case, because if there's a power outage and things like that happen, you may not be able to use your credit card if the phone lines are down. You may not be able to use your credit card, so cash would work. Smaller denomination bills would be the best recommendation. So here are a couple of examples of a bug out bag for two separate scenarios. Obviously, if you look online, you will find different types of setups for a bug out bag or a survival bag. In this particular case, you can see there's like a med kit, a sleeping bag, some flashlights, a two-way radio, and a way to carry water, and then some ready-to-eat meals, and a couple of multi-tools. So shelter in place, this is the alternative to evacuation, which is kind of what we're doing right now, is the shelter in place part. So the FEMA's recommendation is having 1 gallon per person in the household for up to 3 days. Although I personally believe, especially what happened after Katrina, it would not hurt if you had, enough water to last you a week, maybe 2, if you're able to do that. And then Red Cross also has a pamphlet for food and water in an emergency for more information. And then Red Cross information is shared on a slideshow on one of the slide decks further down the road here. And there's different ways to store water at your house, and I'll show you at least 1 or 2 of the different things you could do to easily store bulk water in your house a little bit later. Food, again, you want to get stuff that's long shelf life. There's a lot of things out there right now that you can buy that are ready to eat. Just add water, heat it up. You don't have to necessarily cook it, but just to have to hydrate it. And some of those things have a shelf life anywhere between 5 to 10, upwards of 30 years. So you can get those MREs. Military uses them all the time. It's a good thing to have as a backup plan. Just, you have something on hand just in case. Having blankets, sleeping bags, especially if you're in an area where a natural disaster can strike and you may lose power and you don't have a way to heat your house, especially with elderly and kids around. Make sure you have some tools at home in case you need to use it to, shut off your water, or if there's a pipe that bursts because you have no heat, you can address some of those things. Generator is also a very good resource to have, and if you do decide to get a generator, it will be great if you keep fuel on hand. And also just a quick recommendations: if you are using a generator for your house, do not run it inside your house. Do not run it in your garage, because carbon monoxide, know how to use the equipment appropriately. Carbon monoxide can build up, and there's been plenty of cases during hurricanes and power outages where whole families have passed away because they decided to run the generator inside their house because they were afraid somebody else was going to steal it. So maybe get a good, chain and a padlock to secure your generator outside the house. Get extension cords that you can run into the house, things like that. So something to be to mind, something to consider when you go in and start building up your shelter-in-place kit. Also, do not store massive amount of fuel in your garage either. Same bit about keeping important documentation in multiple locations. It doesn't hurt. This is your house. I'm assuming you will have a lot of other materials and things available to you, but it always doesn't hurt to purposely go and get material that you think would be necessary in an emergency, to have it on hand. You'd rather have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So here's a couple pictures of what it looks like for items that you may need for shelter in place. There's a picture there. You can see they have a lot of hydration material there: water and Gatorade, duct tape, medication, obviously toilet paper, which is kind of a big thing. And then on the right side, you can see a picture that Motimisab took of his stash that he keeps on hand as well. Mostly food-related items that he's kept for an emergency. So there's a couple of examples that are laid out here just so we can talk about some things, and if anybody has any particular questions or some things they might have done for that scenario, they can share their thoughts or ask any questions. Let's say that if you're caught in a fire, a state like California, would be a prime location where you might be in that case where there is either a fire in your neighborhood or a forest fire that's carried over to your neighborhood. Or it could be in your area if you have if you live in an area where you are using a pellet stove, or let's say that there's an electrical fault or something. When you are evacuating, make sure you feel the doors or the back of your hand before opening them. The back of your hand is a lot more sensitive than the palm side of your hands. So the idea there is that if the door feels warm or hot to touch, you do not want to open that door because there is probably fire on the other side of it. Stay low to the ground, obviously, to make sure that you're not breathing in all the fumes and noxious gases, since heat rises upwards, and most of those gases will be at a slightly, the purest air, I guess, you will find, or the cleanest air you'll find will be closer to the ground. Close the doors behind you as you leave. Make sure everybody's accounted for when you go outside, when you leave the building. Try to get away from the building. Obviously, call 911 once you're safe and secure. And if you're not able to get out to safety, make sure you open windows and try to get attention and signal to authorities so they can provide you with help. I've even done, drills with my kids in telling them which doors they can use and how they will get out of the house, or use a window to get out of the house. Obviously, with great precautions to make them understand that they cannot use the second floor window to get down. You got to come to the first floor to get out. Things like that. As I mentioned previously, I'll talk about the car winter storm kit. And so here's an example. This is from one of the Midwest states. I think this is from Wyoming, but it's kind of pretty standard that if you live in an area where winter storms can strike you anytime. There could be road closures. If there's a tree down, you might get stranded. You may have to spend a night in your car. Make sure that you have some sort of food and water in your car, a change of clothes, heavy mittens, a hat, maybe a flashlight, shovel, or to brush off your the snow. It might be ideal to keep some blankets, maybe some tow ropes, even if you're not the one who's stuck, or you might be able to help somebody with it, or you know, if you're stuck and somebody else goes by, they might be able to get you help if you're, you know, slid off the road or something. They can use that, you know, to get you out of bind. Sand or kitty litter, if you're stuck on ice, that could be helpful. Make sure if you're expecting a storm in your area, you always want to keep your tanks full. You don't want to be driving around, you know, in the middle of an emergency or bad conditions with your fuel light on. Flares, obviously, it's a good thing to have in your car anyways, a first aid kit and jumper cables and a spare tire, possibly with chains as well, as that comes in handy. If you have kids, also know your school's plan during a emergency. I say that with respect to school shootings, which have kind of become a normal, or we hear about them quite frequently. So know a plan in case something like that happens. God forbid, you have the correct information for the school. They're not calling the wrong number trying to get a hold of you. So make sure your contact information at the school for your kids is up to date, and then also make sure that you have authorized personnel already provided to school in case of an emergency if you are not able to go pick up the kids from school. As I mentioned previously, I'm providing you with a couple of different resources here. Again, these are not the only resources that are out there. There's plenty more that you can search. There's tons of information available online with respect to doing either survival preparedness or emergency preparedness, or something that's a mixture of both. But these are the guidelines provided to you by national agencies. FEMA, I provided a document there, a website there that has a lot of PDFs linked on there for very in-depth citizen preparedness that you can do, including taking courses that your local county may offer. It's called a CERT program. It's basically a citizen emergency response team program that you may be able to attend, and you can talk to your local Umoomi department, see if you can get approved to, or at least bring somebody from that to provide you with additional training on site and be more geared towards your region or your local area. Ready.gov is also another resource that has all the different catastrophes listed on it and what you might do to prepare for each one. Disasterresistance.gov, that's basically to provide you with any relief if there is a disaster declared in your area. And the last but not least is National Hurricane Center. Great resource if you live in states like Florida. Also, over the past couple of years, the National Umoomi has put out a suggested list of items for emergency preparedness. I basically broke those up so I can fit them on the paper. But what I would recommend is that if you're looking for this sheet, I can share this on Telegram and make it available to you guys so that you have something that you can print out and basically fill in the blanks. These again are suggested items. This necessarily does not say that you have to have something that is listed here, but it's a good reminder of the items that you may use, that you may want to stock up on. It's a 2-pager. It's pretty simple. I would certainly recommend that you take advantage of, because a lot of people, when you say, hey, are you prepared for emergency or what have you, the first question is, what should I get? So this is a very good little cheat sheet that you can get that can walk you through specific items, and it may actually jog your memory on certain other items that you may want to get. So just want to talk about some of the food stuff. If you are trying to bug out, if you will, they have these bars they sell on Amazon. I have no idea how they taste. I happen to have a couple of them, just haven't opened them. These are called 3,000 calorie bars, and it's basically 3 days worth of supply of food in one little package. That's basically fits in your backpack fairly easy. And you can, if you couple local hodam get together, you can buy a bulk box of it, and it cuts down the price by about 50%. Some of the other items that are on here, you've probably seen these commercials on TV during hurricanes or power outages. These boxes come with little sealed pouches. You just basically add water to hydrogenate them, and they're ready to eat thereafter. There's a couple of different brands out there. Make sure you read the proper reviews. Make sure what you're getting is dietary okay for your consumption. Obviously, in this country, there's a lot of items that would have ingredients in them that are not kosher for our use, or not halal, not zabiyah, whatever. So you make sure that you get items that are at least not prohibited as far as dietary needs go. Another resource is EPA.gov. If you don't have access to clean water, you could use bleach to disinfect your water. This is an easy way to take any body of water, 1 gallon, add 8 drops of chlorine in it, or 6 drops, depending on the concentration of bleach that you have. Shake it around, mix it up, then leave it, let it sit for half an hour, and then let it aerate for a few minutes. And basically within an hour, you have 1 gallon of water that is safe to consume. It gives you some of their mixtures there too, if you want to, if you have bigger containers, you want to mix it in. Another option you can, if you've ever been camping, you've probably seen this. You can get these little tablets called purification tablets that you can put in a bottle of water to disinfect it. And you can also get some of these straws, if you will, a life straw or Sawyer's Mini that you can use to fill up bags or just drink out of directly from any body of water in the U.S. Most of them are if you're using one of these life straws or Sawyer Mini, most of them will be good enough to eat. It may not protect all the viruses. So if you see a water body where animals are living, and mammals like beavers and things like that, you may want to avoid those, but this is another item. Again, you want to research on some of these things so you make yourself more knowledgeable. The last thing you want to do is having a dysentery during a bug out situation or trying to get through from one emergency to another. Another item that's on my list, and I highly recommend for anybody to have it, is a dual fuel propane or a butane gas burner. It's basically like a portable stove. I initially bought it for camping, but it's a great handy item for emergency preparedness. I'll show you the one I have. There's another example. This is rainwater collection. I believe this is Irfan Bhai's house. He uses that water, and I'll let him have him cover that during his part of the presentation here. So I think we'll take a break here from the presenting side, and we'll spend maybe 10 minutes on question answers, and before we jump into a show and tell. So with that, if you can allow Irfan Bhai to have the ability to answer questions, and then if there's any questions coming in, I'll check my dashboard here.
So one thing that I wanted to remind everybody of is that anybody who's asking questions on Zoom can ask them live. Just raise your hand. The YouTube comments have been disabled. Anybody who wants to ask a question on YouTube, you'll use a link, and I'll put it on the screen right now, so you'll be able to see it. If you have any comments, just send them to, it's a Google form. Just send them via this link, and we'll respond to it there as well. So I'm gonna put that on the screen.
Do you have any questions that came in at all, or?
I just shared the Google
Okay.
the link.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions here, feel free to just raise your hand and we'll unmute you. So I'll start with Hassan Sayed. Hassan, I'm gonna unmute you.
Alaikum. I had a question about when we stock up on some of this extra food. We've had sometimes a problem of time passing and then it like expiring. So what maybe in your guys' experience, what are nice ways to really use up that food and then continue to keep your stock, as time goes on? Definitely.
It's actually a very, very good question. The best thing to do is cycle through your material. So let's say that if you have 10 pounds of rice in your emergency storage, next time when you go and buy a new bag of rice, you actually go and put that in your emergency supply and take the one that you previously had out for use. That way you're constantly replenishing stuff. So it's not going to just expire on you, which was basically a huge waste of money. So you buy material that you think you can use, even if it's not something that's like the first thing you reach for when you're hungry, but go ahead and use it so you can replenish it. So, for me, an example I'll give you is I bought canned chicken. I don't eat canned chicken because normally you can 99% of the time go to a store and get fresh meat. But when I go camping, I take those cans with me, I use them up, and I replace them with newer sets. So that's one way I'm able to do it. Let Motamixab answer if he's got some other additional ideas.
Yeah, no, it's 100% right. That's what I do too. You just have to you just have to be aware of what you have when you bought it. Every 6 months or so, just go through your stock and cycle out whatever is getting close to expiration, consume it and replenish it. That's basically all you have to do. Is you just have to be mindful of that and do it every 6 months or however long, do it frequently.
And I do want to share one little tidbit with you. A lot of the items that are sold in the US, maybe worldwide as well, they have a best by date or a expiration date, if you will. If you're close to the expiration date, it doesn't mean that now the product is not safe for your consumption. In majority of the cases, if it's a long-term shelf item, it actually may last a lot longer than what's listed on the product. Now, if it's a canned item, maybe there's a lot more things that are going on in it. I would not consume it. But if it's a pouched item, the likely scenario is that the best by date is probably a suggested date. It may stay good for another 6 months to a year. Don't quote me on it. Not a doctor, but it's something that I've read about. And it's, if you have to use it, don't throw it away if expiration date was yesterday. That's what I'm trying to say.
So is there any other questions that have come in?
So I haven't gotten any questions via the Google questions thing, but otherwise we'll just keep it open for a second. I think we can take a second and.
All right. So I guess what we'll do now is we'll just go to that show and tell, and then if there's questions that come in, then you can just stop me and I'll answer the questions as they come in. So let me flip my screen around. All right. So if everyone can see me, we're in my garage right now at home. In my garage at home, I've got a cabinet where I keep all my supplies. I guess the biggest problem, the biggest challenge that people will have is that they have a lot of stuff in their house, but it might just be spread out through their house. And so when it comes time to actually finding it, you're not able to find it. So having everything in one central location is good. For me, I've got this cabinet in my garage where I keep the majority of my stuff. Are you guys able to see it?
Gee, we can see it.
All right, so I'm gonna go through the cabinet, kind of go through and show you what I've got, and then I've got some stuff laid out on the table as well. I'm just gonna go through and show you what I've got, why I've got it. So in this cabinet here, on the bottom shelf, I've got like the non-food items. So I've got lighters in here. I've got latex gloves in here. I've got batteries. So pretty much everything that I have is gonna be either AAA or AA battery powered. So I've got batteries stocked up. I've got flashlights. So I keep these flashlights with no batteries in them in case if the batteries leak, they don't destroy the flashlight. And these are all powered off AAA. All my other flashlights are powered off AAA as well. So I've got candles. I've got these, these 5-hour candles. So if things got that bad where I lost power, I lost my generator, I lost all my flashlights, I've got candles. So think of it that way, just kind of have like a tiered mentality for all of your supplies. I've got tissues in here. I've got some food items on the next shelf. Like I've got some spices. I've got plenty of chickpeas. I've got pickles, noodles, tomato sauce. The next shelf up, more like the hygiene items. I've got laundry detergent. dishwashing detergent, toilet tissue. So this is like all the stuff that we've got for like disaster preparedness. This isn't like our regular, day-to-day stuff that we consume, but every 6 months or so, I'll have to come through and check the expiration dates on all this stuff and either, donate it, get rid of it, consume it, get some more stuff. So on this side of the shelf, I got all the dal. I mean, I probably got about 40, 50 pounds of dal in here. I mean, it's probably one of the best things to have because it can be stored very well. It can be stored for a long time. It's easy to cook. It doesn't require a lot of refrigeration, if any. When you do cook it, I've got brown sugar in here. I've got noodles and spaghetti noodles and all types of stuff. Then on the next shelf, I've got more chickpeas. I've got, chili beans, just more canned foods, basically. I got salt. I got tomato sauce. Then up on the next shelf, I've got the cooking oil and coconut oil, olive oil. Then I've got a couple of these. It's like powdered milk. You just add water and you got milk, and then we got cereal. So I'm going to close these up. Yeah, I'm going to close these up and go over to the table right here. So on the table, I got one of these like 30-day food buckets. So this is like one person's food for 30 days. So somebody in my house, at least one person will have food for 30 days. But the thing about it is that you want to like mix it up, because if you had to eat this stuff for 30 days, you go crazy trying to eat this, dehydrated food. So having a mixture of different things is good. So I've got cereal. I got plenty of cereal. I've got 3 kids. So we go through a lot of cereal. I think like the biggest thing you need to have a lot of is dal, flour, and rice. Because I mean, that's pretty much, it's easy to store. It's got a lot of protein. It's easy to cook. So I've probably got about 40, 50 pounds of rice and probably about 40 pounds of dal. Same thing with the flour. There's probably about 40 pounds of flour that I've got stored up. So then we've got like the paper plates and the paper cups and all that stuff in case if, for whatever reason, we're not able to wash dishes, we can just use the disposable stuff. First aid kit. You gotta have a first aid kit. This is just a kit that we put together with like bandages and things like that. Interesting thing about this is that last week I was working here in the garage and I was working on the table saw and I was changing the blade on it, and the wrench slipped and I nicked my finger, and it took a decent amount of skin off of my finger, and I could tell it needed stitches, but I don't want to go to a hospital right now because of the COVID. So last place I want to go to is a hospital if I don't have, coronavirus and go there and get infected. So what I ended up doing was with this first aid kit, I basically just patched my finger back up. My wife, we've got some skin glue. So she cleaned the wound. She kind of put the skin back in place and, taped it up with the skin glue. And the good thing about it is that since, we're all at home, we're saying namaz 5 times a day. So every time I go for wuzu, I would take the bandages off and kind of dress the wound and everything. So the first aid kit saved me a trip to the ER to get my finger stitched back up. All right, so over here, this is one of my hens. It's an egg laying hen. I've got 5 of these hens. And so these gals, every day I get one egg from these chickens. So I get about 4 or 5 eggs a day from these. And if things got really bad where I had to slaughter them, I've got some meat. So I've got 5 of these chickens. I could have dinner for a couple weeks. So good egg source. A lot of municipalities nowadays, you can have chickens in your backyard. So it's a good thing to have. Bicycle. So everything I'm going over now is kind of like your shelter in place items. I'll go over like the bug out items later, like if I had to leave home and go. So bicycle, have a working bicycle. If for whatever reason your car is demobilized and it's out of gas or whatever, have a bicycle that works, know how to use it, stay in shape so that you can use it. I've got firewood. So the thing about the firewood, it's all seasoned. You can tell by it's got the cracks across the grains. So that's a way that you can tell it's seasoned. And so when you go to split it, when you split the firewood, you hit it, and it'll spread across the grains. So I've probably got about half a face cord of firewood out there. So if things got really bad, where we're talking about in the middle of winter, I have no power, the backup generator went out, the house was freezing, I've got a fireplace, I could light the wood and attempt to heat the house up. So next thing I've got is the generator. So this particular generator right here, this is like a 6,500 watt generator. So 6,500 watts is the peak wattage on it. It's about 5,000 watts is the running wattage. And so stack up a little bit. So then with this here, I can pretty much run the essentials in my house, like my furnace, my sump pump, water heater. I've got well water, so I have to provide power to the pump. This thing here, it's probably got about a 3-gallon gas tank on it. And so it's got a 10 horsepower engine on it. So you're talking probably about a gallon of gas per hour consumption. So I'm only going to get about 3 or 4 hours of use out of this generator before it runs out of gas. So the main thing is that you want to identify whatever circuits you want to run and don't overload the generator. Don't even run it at half a load. Run it at maybe a third or a quarter load. That way you'll be able to get more use out of the tank of gas. I don't recommend that you store a bunch of gas. I mean, right now in Wisconsin, gas is like really cheap. I think I saw it yesterday for $1.28 a gallon. So you want to go out and just buy like a 55-gallon drum full of gas, but it's dangerous. It's very volatile. It'll go stale. So just have a little bit of gas on hand to run the generator. In my case, if worse came to worse, my truck's got a 38-gallon gas tank. So if I was really in a hard up spot, I could siphon some gas out of my truck. It wouldn't be pretty, but I'd be able to do it. One thing I forgot to mention was the water. So I just got a few gallons of water right here on the table, but I've probably got about another 30 gallons of drinking water inside the house. I didn't want to bring it all out here. But the important thing about water is that you got to have your drinking water and you got to have your hygiene water. So what I mean by hygiene water is you got to have water to wash your hands and wash your dishes, because you're not going to wash your clothes with drinking water. So for the hygiene water, I've got a 50-gallon rain barrel outside where I can collect the rainwater. And it's a really overlooked resource that people overlook. You can, one rainfall, that thing will fill up in a couple of hours and you got 50 gallons of, fairly decent clean water that you can use for whatever. And if worse came to worse, if I really was in a bind, I'd boil it and then use it for drinking water or for cooking. So now this is like all the stuff I would have, like if I'm sheltering in place. If I need to get out of the house, I've got my bug out items. So I got my tool bag. In my tool bag, I've got like pliers, wrenches, socket set, basic wiring tools. I've got my 95 mask. I've got a headlight, gloves, pocket knife. This right here is probably the most important, not the most important, but it's probably like the most versatile tool. It's like $15 to go get a hatchet. I bought this when we had the Yosemite Ijtima. I never used it once in Yosemite, but I use it all the time around the house. It's very, very helpful, very handy tool. Then I got my tent. This is like the Yosemite tent that we had in Yosemite. They say it can seat 5 people, but realistically, it's probably about 3 people. Sleeping bags, I probably got about 5 sleeping bags. So then I've got a water container. So if I had to go, like Umar Bhai was saying, you don't want to go too heavy, just because you're going to go somewhere where the idea is you're going to go somewhere and find shelter somewhere else and find the necessities that you need. So I got some MREs. So these are like the military MREs. Like one of my friends is in the Army. He gave me these. He says they'll fill you up, but they'll also plug you up too. So they'll constipate the heck out of you. So you don't want to eat too many of these. One thing I don't have out here on display is my bag that I call my go bag, where I've got a couple $1,000s in cash in it. I've got my passports, birth certificates. I've got all the documents. I've got my pistol in there. So that's like the bag that I take. Like if things really get out of control, we'll grab that bag and then we'll get out of the house. But hopefully, God forbid, it gets that bad that I have to get that bag out. What I'm holding in my hand right now is a ham radio, and this is something that I think everybody should have. There's you take a test online, or not online, but you can study for it online. You take a test, you get your ham radio license. This is a really inexpensive radio, but worst case scenario, the grid goes down, you have no power, the cell network goes down, you have no way to communicate. The communications is like probably the most important thing that you need to maintain. Because if not, you're going to burn through all your resources pretty quick if you don't know what's going on around you. This radio right here, I can pick up UHF, VHF channels. So like, I'll give you an example. Today, we had some bad weather coming through the Milwaukee area. And so there was people on the ham radio broadcasting like the storm is entering Milwaukee and this city or this neighborhood. So there was a lot of useful information being broadcast on the radio. I've got this thing programmed where I've got some, I've got like the National Weather Service. So you'll just broadcast the National Weather Service. It's also got a feature where you can just pick up regular FM stations. So I could pick up some music stations if I wanted to. So the main thing is stay connected. Communications is key. So whether you're staying in place or whether you're leaving, you got to have some form of communication. I kind of rushed through everything pretty quickly, but that's pretty much what I have. If anyone's got any questions on, what they should have or why I've got what I've got, feel free to ask them. But I'll hand it over to Omar Bhai if you want to show us what you've got, or if there's any questions that came in.
One question came in. The question is it safe to order off Amazon? I guess they're referring to maybe food items especially, but then the other items as well.
It's safe. If you're worried about it, I guess, what are you worried about? You're worried about getting the virus because there might be a virus on the package. What I've got personally, we've got a bottle of disinfectant sitting next to the front door. So as our packages come in, you spray them down with the disinfectant. Same thing if you go to Walmart. I went to Walmart last week and the lady checking me out was coughing all over my food. I don't know if she just had like a bad cough or if she had, coronavirus. But, I got like all my food there. She's coughing and hacking all over it. But same thing there. I mean, if you're worried about your supplies, just disinfect them when you get home.
And maybe from the other angle, you can explain it too, that in terms of food, just ordering food in general off Amazon, these other items off Amazon, I'm assuming the other items are safe, but maybe food in particular, is it safe to order off Amazon, like that 30-day food supply bucket thing?
It's safe. You gotta realize what you're ordering. A 30-day supply of food in a 5-gallon bucket. It's probably not gonna kill you. It's probably gonna taste bad. It's probably gonna, plug you up, as far as constipate you. But it's if that's what you have to do, then that's what you have to do. So for that, I would say yes, it's safe to order, but you also want to mix up what you've got. So you don't want to just buy 5 of those buckets because you have 5 people at home and think that you're set for the next 10 years. You got 30 days worth of food. So just buy a little bit of here, a little bit there. So like I said, if you're worried about stuff you're buying on Amazon might not be healthy or whatever the case is, then just shop around. The biggest thing is that you want to look for this. You want to look for these things when there's no pandemic going on, when there's no crisis. That's when you can buy stuff at the best price. That's when you get the best quality product.
So Irfan, the question is then, where should people look to buy these type of items in particular? And the second question is, what about laxatives? Should we now have those on hand too in regards to being plugged up so much?
Well, it's all about balance. So you've got like the MREs, which are like really, they are what they are, but then you've also got stuff like, you got the wheat atta and the dal, so you got stuff that you gotta mix it up. Do you need to buy laxatives? If it's an issue with you, that's something that you have a problem with normally, then yeah, you should. But just keep your eyes open. Just keep in mind, like every time you go to Walmart, buy an extra container of water, buy an extra, thing of canned foods or whatever. So anytime you're out and about, just keep your eyes open and just come back home and replenish your stock. So for now, now that we're in this pandemic, you're kind of limited as far as what you can buy. But once the pandemic ends, then you'll have more options out there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let me jump in real quick. I know you have more questions possibly, but the food items, I agree with Irfan by 100%. Today is not the time to go buy it. If you try to buy it right now, these items are already out of stock. It's better to have it when you didn't need it. And now if you go to Mountain House's website, all of these things are sold out. These particular items I bought off Amazon a few years back, and price of these have gone up by about 25, 30% just in the last couple of days. So it's definitely not worth buying it. But right now, the food supply, the food chain, the supply chain is pretty well, it's still working. You can still go to Walmart, you can still go to Target, you can still go to your local grocery stores to get material. So don't panic, don't hoard material today or tomorrow. It's not the right time for it. Just get what you need, leave the other things on the shelf for other people. The time to hoard is when nobody else was buying it. So I just want to throw that out there. A point on buying water, it's good to have portable water that you can throw in, whether you need bags or whatever, you can throw in and take it with you. I did mention earlier that there is another way you can store water, if you don't have like a straw or whatever. And these things are called water bobs. I don't know if you're going to be able to find one today, but it's basically a big giant bag that you drop inside your bathtub, and then you fill it up with bath water, and then when you need it, there's a little built-in pump on it. You squeeze it out and it gives you water, stores up to 100 gallons. You can do something similar using clean trash bags and fill it up and keep it inside your tub, because that way, even if they burst, it's not going to cause flooding in your house. So that's a good item to have. One thing I did not mention in the presentation is having a good working fire extinguisher. You definitely should have one in your kitchen anyways, but it's always a good idea to have one wherever you're going to be keeping or using your indoor propane or gas stove. I think Irfan covered most of the sanitary items. He talked about the ham radio. There's another example of a radio that has the weather mode on it. So if you live in an area where you want to keep up with the weather situation, it's solar powered, it's hand cranked, and you can also, it has a battery USB as well. So you can charge your phone, albeit it's not going to do you much, but it's better than nothing. Always a good idea to have, good power supplies. Easily accessible batteries are pretty good, but you can now also get flashlights that take these big batteries that are 3100 milliamp hour, 4.3 volt batteries, and these things will last you forever on a low setting on a flashlight. I think Irfan also mentioned some multi-tools. Again, I just kind of put a mishmash of items here that are both belong in the shelter in place and also belong in a to-go bag. One of the things I highly recommend is some sort of box cutter with blades, so you don't have to worry about sharpening your blade. You can just swap it out and replace it on the go. Obviously, having masks and things like that, now is probably not the time to go get one if you can try to get your hands on one. And obviously having plenty of first aid type material at home, because you never know when you may need it. Just like Irfan, I use a lot of power tools at home. Table saw, circular saw, bandsaw. Something is going to happen. Make sure you have materials available to you. Another thing I talked about that you throw in your car is this thing called some Mylar thermal blanket. As you can see, it only takes a little bit of space. You can even fit it in your pocket. You've probably seen this used by people in an emergency case. It keeps you pretty nice and warm. And then one thing I mentioned was the protein. There's not a lot of dal I eat, so for me, having access to protein that you can eat now is probably not the best thing to eat. Sardines and oil, and this is also chicken and water. But they have pretty good shelf life. It will last on the shelf for a few years. This one expires October this year. I've had it for a few years, so I'll go through it by October this year. Dried milk, if you have kids, things like that, will come in handy. And obviously, you can't do much. If you don't have water, having hand sanitizer goes a long way. And then this is a great bartering material. If you don't have thousands of dollars of cash, you can trade this for cash possibly. I wanted to answer the Amazon question. when you get deliveries that are delivered to your house, I've been leaving mine untouched for 24 hours before I open it. I have a designated area in my garage where I open the packages, and then I leave them in the garage for another 2 or 3 days. Unless I need it immediately, then I wipe it down and take it for use.
So there are two more questions. If you want to take a pause for a second, you want to just take those. The questions come. The first one is for Mohammad Saab. I believe the question is asking about the details of the rainwater collection. Did you buy it yourself, set it up yourself, and where can somebody buy one?
The one that I bought it from a guy who makes them. But after I bought it, I realized it's very easy to make. Like if you go on Craigslist, you can find people selling used plastic barrels. You want to look for a food grade plastic barrel. Like it could have had like soda syrup in it or something like that. But essentially all you do is you get the barrel and then you just use regular PVC pipe and just make some, bends and elbows and get a, as far as connecting it to your rain gutter, you just go to Home Depot or Menards or wherever, Lowe's, and you can get a downspout. And same thing with there, you just get the elbows and you connect that to the barrel, and you put an overflow on the barrel so that when a barrel fills up, it just drains back into your yard, and put a spigot at the bottom. So the one I bought from a guy who made it for me, but I need another. I'm going to put another one by my chicken coop in the backyard. I'm just going to make that one myself.
I'll ask another question. Another question comes in. Any suggestions on medication?
As far as medication, like in your basic first aid kit, you'd have painkillers, like insect bite ointments, burn ointments, things like that. Just the basic stuff that you would need. Anything more than that, like if you've got prescriptions, I mean, that you would know best what your situation is. But insect bites, burns, pain, upset stomach, medicine for that, sunblock, things like that you'd want to have in your first aid kit. Yeah. Umar, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, the only thing I want to add into it, which I also forgot to mention, is if there is a disaster, like if there's a hurricane coming, or if there's an evacuation order being issued by by 8 p.m. or midnight tomorrow or something like that, a lot of places, pharmacies will allow you to get your prescription ahead of time. So normally they let you only refill your prescriptions like, a couple of days before your time is up. But if there is a disaster, a pending disaster, you are allowed to get your prescriptions filled immediately. So definitely do that. We did that for our household a couple of weeks ago before this whole shutdown and self isolation started.
So another comment comes in, and you guys can expand on this further. This comment comes in suggesting that water for emergency preparedness. He says, I used to get 1 gallon water jugs from Costco to drink, but instead of throwing them away, I refilled them with sink water and put them to the side for emergency's sake. Can you comment on this and make sure this is a safe practice?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. If the water is safe, if the water that you're collecting is safe for drinking, then just keep an eye on it and just make sure that there's no mold or algae or anything growing inside the bottle. Because once you open the bottle up and expose it to the atmosphere, you might be exposing it to some bacteria. So, I mean, as long as you store it properly and it doesn't, go bad, as long as the bottles don't go bad, you should be all right.
Yeah, so the only add-on there is that's a great idea. Definitely get those tablets for water purification, to keep them on hand. So if you have 30 bottles or 30 gallons of water, make sure you have at least 30 of those pills. Also, if you have bleach, you can use drops of bleach, like I told you before, EPA link provided. You put 8 drops per gallon. You shake it for 30 seconds or so. Let it sit for 30 minutes so the chlorine can kill everything, and then air it out for another 10, 15, 20 minutes so the chlorine smell goes away, because it evaporates fairly quickly. And then you have nice, clean, disinfecting water. May not be the best tasting water, may not be the best water you ever had, but at least it'd be disinfected, wouldn't have anything in it, as chlorine would have disinfected.
My camera off now.
Okay, maybe we can share the answer with Tariq Bhai later. But if you guys have any final closing remarks before I make announcements?
No, I just want to, I appreciate everybody for joining. I appreciate the question, Tariq Bhai. He always got good jokes. But yeah, the main thing is that we just want to let everybody know, you know, just kind of open up your eyes, what's going on around you, just kind of, you know, so everybody should be ready so that nobody's caught off guard for whatever the next crisis is going to be. Thank everybody for joining the session and asking the questions. Hopefully Umar Bhai and I were able to enlighten you with what you should do, what you shouldn't do, and we can definitely continue the conversation.
Umar Bhai, do you have any closing remarks before we close?
Yeah, Jazakallah for all the people who joined. And if you have any questions, you know, you guys can contact us through Telegram, and would love to share anything that we know. If there's anything we mentioned that did not jive well with you, please let us know that as well so we can get that corrected. Other than that, again, thank you again for joining us and staying with us.
Jazakallah. So I'll just make a couple quick announcements. The first, before I make the announcements in regard to tomorrow's program, there's a shift in the protocol. Starting tomorrow, we will no longer be streaming the program live on YouTube. All Khuddam brothers are requested to please make Zoom accounts and join via Zoom, not via YouTube. I know this might be an inconvenience to some of you, but it's my humble request to everybody to please try to join via Zoom rather than YouTube. It'll keep these programs interactive as well. And there are some instructions that we've received in regards to doing this. So again, please remember that please join via Zoom. So in regards to tomorrow's program, first we'll have a program presented by the National Tarbiyat Department at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on cleanliness as a part of faith. Hazur mentioned in his Friday sermon that as Muslims, we already do wuzu 5 times a day, and that in itself is a way of cleaning ourselves physically as well as spiritually. So the one thing that Murabbi Hamad Sahab will be presenting on is the other measures that Islam has prescribed to our Khuddam and to Muslims in regards to staying clean and that preventing COVID-19. And there are a lot of things that I didn't know that Murabbi Sahab will be presenting. So it's not just the basics. Murabbi Sahab will be presenting some advanced tips and some really great information that is extremely useful in these times. So I'd recommend to everybody to please join in. You'll learn a lot of valuable things. After that, a much anticipated session will be coming up from the Sehat Jismani department at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be a live workout session in which Murabbi Dibba Sahab and I believe someone else will be going through a live workout and fitness circuit when all Khuddam are requested to join and follow along. I know myself, I've been kind of sticking to the fridge or sticking close to the fridge, being stuck at home. So I think that this is a good time for me too to get up on my feet and try to burn away some of these quarantine calories. So that again, that session is at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll go through a live workout session, and we'll also go through a question and answer session on health tips, and there'll be a presentation on how to control that weight gain you might be having during this quarantine. Again, one reminder is that on Sunday, we will have the closing session with respect to Amir Saab at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. This closing session will feature a question and answer session with respect to Amir Saab. This will be only on Zoom, and Khuddam are requested to join on time, and we'll join early actually, so we can please get everybody inside. And Amir Saab wants to have a very open discussion with all Khuddam in regards to different matters and different issues we're facing. So this will be a very open discussion with Amir Saab, and he'll be addressing us as well in regards to the pandemic. So all Khuddam brothers are please requested to join on Sunday for that as well. We'll be sharing more updates along the way in the Telegram chat, so please keep an eye out for that. Jazakallah to everybody for joining, and I want to give a big Jazakallah to the national Umoomi team, Mohtamim Saab and Umar Bhai for taking the time out to do this. I learned a lot. I think I'm going to start building my rain barrel after this as well, and maybe buy some chickens, or if I can. So I think Jazakallah both for that a great presentation.
Alaikum.
All right, assalamu alaikum.
Okay, so we'll close the meeting. Inshallah, we'll see everybody tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.